In the time between 813 and about 820-821, Ireland had a period of relative calm, compared to the previous 18 years with almost constant Viking raids on churches and monasteries. Many native communities in Ireland, particularly ecclesiastical ones, relocated themselves on the continent, or further afield in places like the Faroe Islands, and even maybe Iceland, to escape the pagan marauders. It is now thought that these early raids were launched directly from the southwest of Norway, and that during the period of relative calm, the Norwegian Vikings were occupied in northern Britain, setting up new bases or reinforcing their old ones on the Shetland Islands and Orkney Islands, settling them permanently. Any monasteries existing there was surely razed to the ground. During this time, the Norse Vikings also discovered the Faroe Islands. That surely must have made the monks living there thank their Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, as a guiding light on how to evade the pagan Vikings. The Norsemen also invaded the Outer Hebrides and the Isle of Skye around this time, setting up forward bases as staging areas for further Viking raids on Scotland and Ireland, laying the foundations of a new kingdom, referred to in the Irish sources as Lethlin. Lethlin was once thought to be in Norway, but is now identified with Viking settlements in the British Isles, especially those in Scotland and the Isle of Man. Although Ireland were living in a period of relative calm, it was one exception. On Scattery Island in Shannon Estuary on the west coast of Ireland, there was a monastery of 5 churches and a round tower that was founded by Saint Sinan about 534. He is listed among the 12 apostles of Ireland. In 815 or 816, the monks in the monastery was spending all their time repenting their sins that had been placed on them by a Jew called Jesus nearly 800 years earlier on another continent. At the same time, there were other people in the neighborhood that was not crippled by a foreign god. People living according to their own nature and logic. And they had the power of Thor on their side. For all the years these monks had wasted on kneeling before the dead Jew on the cross could not redeem them for their unforgivable act of lying about nature. The Vikings righteously slaughtered the monks, burned down the 5 churches, and took everything of value they could get their hands on. With the longships filled to the brim with gold and silver, they sailed back to their bases on the islands in northern Scotland. In 821, the Vikings came to the village Itar on Howth Head, a peninsula just north of not yet founded Dublin. The name Howth is thought to be of Norse origin, perhaps being derived from the Old Norse word Huvud, which means head in English. There, the Vikings rescued many women from the shackles of Christianity and brought them back to the liberated islands in northern Britain, where they could live according to nature, or according to the Annals of Ulster. Itar was raided by foreigners, and a great booty of women was carried away by them. Itar is the old Irish name for Howth. The same year, another party of Vikings started raiding further south in Ireland. This time, it might have been Danes, who after raiding in Francia the year before, found their way to Ireland's southeast coast. Or they might have been Norse. It's just a theory. The Vikings sailed into the bay of not yet founded Wexford. There it was 2 small islands with monasteries on them. One was called Begarin, The monastery was founded by Imar of Bangor as early as the 5th century. The other, Oak Island, where the monastery was founded by Saint Comhain a little later. Which island they attacked first is unknown, but we can be pretty sure that the monks on one of the islands could see the monastery on the other island burning. I'm sure they were praying to the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, that he would bring their brothers salvation. But no salvation was given to their brothers or to themselves, because Jesus, if ever existing at all, was just a common Jew, who at best pointed out the hypocrisy of his own tribe and was crucified for it. So the monks was shit out of luck, and no pardon was given for their crimes against nature. The Vikings went back to their ships with all the silver and gold the monks had stolen from the people. They then started rowing across the bay to the other island, where the monks were waiting anxiously for salvation from their Lord. The only salvation they received came in the form of a sword or an axe from the Vikings, who put an end to their lying tongues, who had led their people astray. With the second monastery in flames, the Vikings sailed away with their ships filled up with treasure. Then they sailed down the southeast coast and into the outlet of the river Barrow, and then into the river Sur, where there was a little island in the middle of the river with a monastic settlement, right next to not yet founded Waterford. The Vikings pillaged the island, killed the monks, and burned the place down. They may then have wintered on some island or another remote location. In 822, the Vikings sailed into the bay of yet not founded Cork, where a monastic settlement was situated on the east side, with the monastery of Cloyne at its center. The monastery was founded by Colman of Cloyne in 560. The Vikings attacked the settlement and monastery, killed monks, and gathered all the treasure they could find. As the monastery was burning, they went back to their longships. They sailed further into the bay, into Loch Mahon and up the river Lee. On a limestone cliff above the river in today's Cork, the Vikings could see the church and monastery that was founded by Finbar of Cork in 606. The Vikings pillaged the church and monastery, killed the monks standing in their way, set the place on fire, and sailed on. By 823, the Vikings on the Shetland Islands had finished building up their main base and had stored up enough supplies, manpower, and longships to start raiding again on a regular basis and on a much larger scale. In 823, over 20 Viking ships sailed into Belfast Loch. Hitherto, the attacks of the Norsemen had fallen chiefly upon monasteries of a secondary importance. Their next victim was to be of a much more stately foundation, namely the monastery of Bangor, which was founded in 558 by Saint Comgall. It was situated on the south side of Belfast Loch in the county Down. 3,000 monks at one time obeyed its rule, and it became the foster mother of many missionaries from all over Ireland. Over 1,000 Vikings plundered and pillaged the monastery. They killed the bishop, the doctors, the clergy, the monks, and they broke the shrine of Saint Comgall and burned the Sikh indoctrination center down to the ground. At the same time, another fleet, or the same fleet, sailed into Strangeford Loch. This loch would become one of the favorite spots for the Vikings to meet up and plan their next incursion. They made landfall in the inner loch, where the Abbey of Movilla was situated. The abbey was founded in 540 by Saint Finian. The Vikings pillaged, killed, and the church with its attached chapels was set on fire. They sailed back down Strangeford Loch and started rowing up Coyle River to the church of Downpatrick, which was in those days the royal residence of the chieftains of the Ulaid kingdom. The church was the burial place of Saint Patrick. If there was any shrine to him there, I'm sure it was smashed to pieces, with the monks lying dead on the ground and the church burning. The Vikings met hard resistance, for we are told they were defeated in a battle by the Ulstermen. In this battle, many people fell on both sides, but the Northmen had to retreat. The Viking fleet might then have split up, one party sailing back to their bases on the islands in Scotland with their plunder, the other party sailing down the east coast, and then rowing upstream of the river Boyne, where the Vikings laid waste to the county of Meath, then went back downstream and down the coast, where they spoilt the village of Luska in the modern county of Dublin. They sailed further down the east coast and then started rowing up the river Barrow. On the east bank of the river, they came upon a monastery that had been founded in 632 by Saint Moling. They plundered, killed monks and set the place alight. They then entered the district of Ossory, where they had a warm reception from the local population, and 170 heathens were killed in the battle. The remaining Vikings had to flee and row back down river again. But before the end of the season, they pillaged the just rebuilt monastery on the island in the river Sur. With the season of 823 coming to an end, the Vikings sailed back to their bases with their plunder. In 824, the Vikings discovered the island of Skellig Michael, a barren rock on the southwest of Ireland. It housed an Augustinian monastery. The date of the monastery's foundation is unknown. It is sometimes attributed to Saint Finia, though it's doubted by historians. The Vikings killed monks, looted and burned the monastery. Itgal of Skellig, the monastery's abbot, was taken as hostage, probably to demand ransom. He died of hunger and thirst thereafter. I guess no one was willing to pay. By 825, Iona Abbey had been rebuilt after the massacre of 68 monks in Martyrs Bay in 806. Blathmac, son of Flann, from a noble family in Ireland, became abbot for the remaining monks living there in 824. One morning in 825, as he was celebrating Mass, the Vikings kicked in the door and entered the monastic church, putting many of the monks to the sword, and then turned upon the abbot and demanded the precious shrine of Saint Columba. On purpose, he remained ignorant of its hiding place, and we are told spoke to the enemy in their barbarous tongue Norse, which was a most curious accomplishment for an Irish ecclesiastic at this time. He said, "I know not truly what gold ye seek, nor where it may be placed in the ground, or in what recesses it may be hid. But if it were permitted for me to know, Christ permitting, never would these lips tell this to your ears. Savagely bring your swords, seize their hilts and kill. O God, I command my humble self to thy protection." But no protection was given by the Jewish God. The Vikings hacked him to pieces on the altar's steps. For his martyrdom or stupidity, he was later canonized as Saint Blathmac. The remaining monks was given the sword, and the abbey was burned to the ground. This time, the abbey would not be rebuilt for a long time. The Vikings also invaded the Isle of Mull and the other surrounding islands and set up bases. This was the start of the fall of the Gaelish kingdom of Dalriada. The same year, the Annals of the Four Masters report the destruction of Dunlegen at Drym by the pagans, in which the son of the Lord of Fortuta was slain with many others. In 826, the Annals of the Four Masters report the martyrdom of the anchorite Timnian by the foragers, we don't know where. In 827, the village of Luska was again raided by heathens and it was looted and burned. The same year, in Connacht on the west side of Ireland, the Vikings rode into Loch Corrib, where they sailed all around the shoreline and went on a rampage throughout the countryside wherever they found any settlement, and carried away great booty. In 828, a battle was fought against the invaders by Cairpri, son of Cathal, king of the Wexford area, and by the family of Tagmon, who had already suffered from their attacks. The monks were becoming martial men and were now allied with the royal clan. They succeeded in repelling the intruding heathens. During the next 2 years, we do not read of any attacks made upon Ireland by the Vikings. But when they return, they will not just raid Ireland, they will invade Ireland. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel and I will create more. Thank you for listening.